backstage person who's texting me right now, who's going to record this event. So I'll just kick things off here, and and folks who come in late can catch up. So welcome everybody on behalf of Black VC. So I'm Joe Blair, a member of the Black VC Events Committee and VC investor at Cota Capital. So this is part of an event series that we're doing about managing your career in VC. So I'm sure, like a lot of other VCs, here on the panel and in the audience, we get pinged by like younger people or people early in the career all the time saying, "Hey, I want to get into VC. How do I get into VC?" And I also do some coaching through HBS, and so I'm often having that conversation. But I always try to impart that like VC is a different type of career than other careers. And it's not like, okay, once you get in, you're set and you just kind of like move up the ranks like a lot of different types, other types of careers. Building a career in VC is often complex. It can be confusing, and it often requires an entrepreneurial mindset. And I would say that one path that all VCs, I would argue, consider at one point or another is starting your own firm. But it does take extraordinary courage to go down this path. But we are fortunate today that we have 3 investors that have founded or in the process of founding their own firm. So I'm excited to introduce them. But just first, a few very quick admin items. This event is scheduled to go 60 minutes. It will be recorded for others to watch it in the future. And we'll save the last 15 minutes or so for audience questions. So as you have questions, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them later in the event. And after the event, you will receive a survey asking you to evaluate the experience, and we would be so grateful if you could take 60 seconds to fill that out for us. So without further delay, and as people are still coming in, I'd like to invite each of our 3 powerful panelists to introduce themselves. I'd love if you guys could just talk about your background, your firm, your strategy, and I'll ask Mac to go, then Jessica, and then Vincent. So take it away, Mac.
How did I get to be picked first? All right, cool. How's it going, everybody? My name is Conwell. I go by Mac. I'm from Baltimore, where I'm based out of now. Went to Morgan State University, HBCU. My sophomore year, while studying computer science, I got an internship with the DoD and got a top secret clearance. So my junior year, I dropped out of school because Northrop Grumman offered me a bunch of money. I was a government contractor for several years, did a bunch of cool stuff I can't talk about. And then in 2010, I started my first company with 2 of my best friends. I didn't know what a startup was. I didn't know what a VC was. I was just 3 black guys who could build stuff. They made me CEO because I was the only person that didn't mind talking to people, and ran that for 4.5 years and eventually sold the IP off to a division of a Fortune 100 company. I started another startup after that, raised some money. That one failed. Got a job at a marketing firm for a year, which sucked. And then the week Philando Castile got shot and killed in his car by a police officer, the organization I worked for started soliciting the National Rifle Association for a contract, in which I quit. At that time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have any plans. And I quit on a Friday, and the very next Monday, I saw that the investment arm for the state of Maryland was hiring a fund manager. And I said, sure, why not? Of course I could do investing. And they actually hired me. Clearly I was affirmative action hire. So affirmative action works, just to be honest about it. I worked there for 4 years. I started off doing seed investments, but when I first got started in 2016, they were struggling to invest in Black-led startups. So I led an initiative to create a pre-seed fund to invest in Black-led companies earlier than anybody else, $40,000 to try and help them get the seed, basically try to institutionalize the friends and family realm. We later opened that fund up to women and all minority groups. And then in 2019, Governor Hogan and legislators decided to put $1 million in the annual budget to make it a long-term fund in the state. It is the first and only state-backed pre-seed fund for women and minorities in the country. And then last September, I decided to leave that job to start RareBreed Ventures. So I'm in the process of raising a $10 million fund. We've closed on 2.4 million of that. Our minimum check size is 10K until April. I can publicly disclose because we're raising under 506C designation to talk about that a little bit as well. So that's my story.
Awesome, exciting. I'm Jessica. Nice to meet y'all. I am originally from Detroit, and I also went to HBCU. I went to Howard for undergrad, Howard grads. After Howard, I spent some time in New York. I first worked at a consumer private equity firm, investing in women. And then after that experience, I went to the operational side of things, and I worked at a private equity backed food service company. Definitely not a sexy industry or experience, but I am all about the unsexy things. And it was a great experience for me to get operational depth of experience and help to turn a business around and give it additional margin and revenue. After that experience, I really wanted to weave impact more into the lens of the work that I was doing based on everything I'd seen. It's great, had worked at a fund, had invested, had worked in operations. But for me, the question was, what value am I adding to the world and specifically to my community? So I went to business school with that thought in mind, went to Stanford, and that's how I landed out in the Bay. And through that experience, explored a lot of things, stopped and started a business. In my second year, I started working at Andreessen Horowitz on a fund called the Cultural Leadership Fund, which is focused on the Black community, specifically with bringing more Black people into technology through our limited partners and through talent into the portfolio companies. And through that experience, it's really catalytic for me to actually being able to think about how to start a commercial vehicle, which means how to make money and how to blend impact into that. And so the last couple months, I left Andreessen and am off to a new firm. Unlike Mac, I can't talk a ton about it because I am under SEC non-solicitation regulation, but it is a private equity firm that is focused. It's a purpose-driven private equity firm, and we're going to be focused on Black-owned, Black-led, and Black-focused companies for our first run here. So excited to chat with y'all, and I'll pass it off to Vincent.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. Vincent here, and let me start by this. Probably you can hear it very well. Born and raised in France here. I'm not gonna hide my accent, and I can't. So started my career. Actually, I studied finance and Chinese. So actually not a surprise that I ended up doing finance in China for a long time, but I started my career at Deloitte in Paris, moved to China 2006, something like that. I stayed 10 years over there, mainly worked for Deloitte also for a while, doing a lot of acquisition projects in the middle of China. I had kind of an Indiana Jones hat where I used to be able to speak fluent Mandarin. I've been losing it for the last 5 years I've been in US, but yeah, a lot of exposure to this amazing market that is China and this double-digit growth. I became the CFO of a trading company. We grew that business from $50 to $200 million in 4 years and exited it to a listed company. And that's the moment I was in position to become an investor, not from my own money, because I was not such an equity holder of the company we exited, but the founder somehow, French dude in Shanghai, moved to New York and called me over to basically launch what became his family office. And I invited my partner in crime, brother from another mother, to join the adventure. My partner Joe, currently, he's in New York himself, when I'm in San Francisco, and we've been growing this family office. And we had the first few successes pretty quickly, 3 exits, returning a certain portion of the capital that put us in a position to raise our fund. And that's how we launched Interlace 2 years ago, focusing on the industry we know the best, which is retail and commerce, and this at early stage. So we invested pre-seed and seed stage, mainly in North America. And we bring together with us our understanding, or let's say exposure to China, Europe, and now more and more North America, and of course all the community that goes with a community made of brands and retailers from all these regions. So that's Interlace.
Awesome. So obviously, thank you guys for sharing your backgrounds. And I guess I want to ask you all, given your experience, given kind of where you were in your career when you made this decision, just like walk us through just that decision point and how you thought about the pros and cons of doing your own thing versus going and joining another platform or continuing on your path. I'd love to just hear like where your head was at when you made that decision and what you thought about at that point. Open to anyone to kick things off.
All right, I'll talk about it, right? For me, my decision to start a fund was driven by two founders that changed my life. I actually never really wanted to start my own fund. I thought I would work for the state, start my career and then turn that into a job at a bigger fund and make real money. That's what I thought was going to happen. But during my process of working at the state, I met a founder, this Black woman who had an idea for a really amazing technology and couldn't even get funding through the program that I was running when I was advocating for us to make the investment in her, to the point where she ended up becoming a surrogate mother to raise 40 grand to start building her prototype. And it's not even enough money to get a full prototype built. But that was the moment I realized I had to start a fund. And so I started, learning and thinking through, putting a thesis together. But the moment I actually raised a fund was because of another founder, because in the early 2020, I said, I'm gonna see if I can raise a fund, try to put some things together. COVID happens, I put it on the back burner, like I'll get to it one day. But then in June, I met a founder in Dallas, Texas, a gentleman by the name of Roberto running a company called RoboAmp, who had revenue. He had a side and channel partner with Accenture, something I've never seen an early stage company have, and was raising a little bit of capital on a really, really low cap. And it didn't make sense. But then I realized it's because he was a Latin founder based in Dallas, Texas. And so when I tried to put the SPV together to make that investment, one of my advisors said they didn't want to invest in that one company. They wanted to invest in every company I found. So he said, here's 250,000, go raise a fund. I wasn't even there. Like my mind wasn't even there. That's not what I was even thinking about. And after like kicking and screaming for like 10 minutes and him telling me like, nah, you need to do this, I just said, all right, we'll go try to do it. And what I've learned through the process is it'll never be the right time and it'll never be the wrong time to raise a fund. Because no matter when you do it, it's always going to be hard. And you're never going to feel ready, but you're also never going to be not ready, if any of that makes sense.
Snaps to that. I'll take the question in maybe the direct direction, but also indirect direction. I think for me, for as long as I remembered, and I think maybe it's like part of growing up, like I've always felt like a very specific pull towards focusing on our community. And I've spent my career trying to determine like what that looks like. Is it as an operator creating products that service? And when I say our community, I mean underrepresented communities, the Black community, Latinx community, people who are traditionally seen as the majority. So I spent my career kind of thinking about what does that look like, and how do I explore that, and how do I explore what that looks from like an impact standpoint. And when I say impact, I just mean serving us. So I think I've just been in search of that type of thing for a long time, and through my experiences, have just started to hit on the points of capital allocation, and that being for me one of the most important things that can happen within investing in operators and founders. So being a capital allocator as a Black woman, someone that can be able to give people of color where I see opportunities that others can't see. I've seen that as important, and really learned that I think through my last experience at Andreessen, just being able to focus and go into the depths of that. And so when I think about starting a firm, I think of it as like the nascent pieces have always been there. It's just been consistent learnings that built on to what is it, what can I do, and how can I find my own zone of genius to be able to serve that. And when I say zone of genius, I mean, where does like my passion, my experiences, and kind of my own insights come to bear where I can focus on putting something together that's differentiated in the market and serves an existing need. So that's it.
I'm not sure I heard well the question, and Joe, because for whatever reason my computer disconnected, but I think it's around the why, right?
It's the why, and just how did you think about that decision whether or not to do that or do something else at the time, the risk reward, trade-off there.
Okay. On my end, and as I just described, is very accidental. Also, I did not plan to become an entrepreneur. I think about 6 years ago, I wasn't really clear about what a VC or a startup. I was in the middle of China, and maybe one of the constants was I was really in touch with entrepreneur, and I tend to believe that you always become somehow the average of all the people that constitute your network. I mean, you're somewhere at the very center. So hanging out with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's not surprising that I ended up becoming an entrepreneur, because the way I see it is creating your own fund is a way to go on your entrepreneur journey. I mean, when you've been a founder, of course, you made it in a different way. On my end, that's the first time I really take such a big risk, and this is where I think it enables me to resonate much more with what the entrepreneur are going through. So I'm really happy about the situation. As for the why was real response to a need and for consistency at certain moment of this opportunity investment career. Put it this way, we were at a crossroad where we had to thrive and define a direction for the fund that we were really deeply believing in, and in order to be able to implement that vision, we needed the agility and the freedom that put us in a situation that we had to spin off from the family office. And that was super risky, because at this moment we had absolutely no insurance that these guys will back us or anybody will back us. I mean, imagine two Frenchy big outsider coming from nowhere decided to invest in US on probably what is the equivalent of the Champions League of VC. I mean, you have to be a little bit crazy to believe that it's working, but a little bit like other things, other big decision I've taken in my life. I think I've been listening to my guts and my affection and my emotions, and thinking that there was definitely an opportunity to make it happen, and also not afraid of learning by doing, and so the decision making process, well, it was kind of simple and easy at the end, and probably because we did not realize all the challenges it met at that time. So easy, logical for consistency, and then discovered all when we were on the road. So since then, I have many advice for people who wants to start their own fund, and definitely it's not an easy path, but like any entrepreneur, I believe it's hard. It's great to feel alive. Put it this way.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the common theme I'm hearing is that there was some sort of a calling. Like Jessica describes, like the zone of finding the zone of genius and having that line up, and Vincent talking about following the gut, and Mac, your comment about it's never a right time. That's the exact same advice I give people who are trying to figure out when they want to have kids. I'm like, there's never a right time. You just got to do it. And by the way, you're probably going to hear my kids in the background. But okay, so switching gears a little bit. I'd love to hear about your experience, like as an emerging manager, right? As a first time, like, starting your first fund or raising your first fund. What was it like going out there and pitching LPs? Like, what kind of feedback did you hear? What kind of, advice or like, you know, surprises, what surprised you during that process? So anyone can.
Oh,
Well,
my take. Go ahead, Vincent.
well, no, for me, everything was surprising because I discovered everything. I actually discovered at some point that I had to fundraise. so it was really a VC 101 when we were at the same moment raising a fund. So I would say the first thing that I started to understand after a few weeks and a few months, and maybe it sounds really trivial, but I think it's fundamental, is to understand that there are many different categories of LPs, and that you really have to understand quickly what they're after. It's absolutely not the same as pitching an individual who's going to invest with his own money, or pitching an institutional who's going to have to report about the performance and why he made this choice without potentially having all the reward of taking such a risky bet to invest on an investing manager. So you really have to understand what's the patrimonial part of the decision-making process, and this throughout all the spectrum of different LPs that you can to meet. So this was the very first big learning, and if I can save anybody time here by going through the different categories, and something that was maybe really also instrumental in my growth in pitching, and this it comes from some of my senior who advised me to ask this question. It was first time you meet a potential LP, ask him what was his most exciting investment, and through that you may have a better understanding of his psychology. Is he a follower? Is he a technician? Is he after the performance? And then you know better how to better pitch himself. So it's all about adjusting your speech and your positioning to who you have in front of you, without of course transforming your essence and your core, but just shaping it, customizing it in order the person can hear what they care about. So it's a big exercise of listening at the end of the day, like probably like any sales. But
I can't speak to my specific experience, but I can speak to some of the hurdles. And there are a couple that I understand. And I mean, this is really building on Vincent, but I'll just call out two things that you should be aware of if you're starting a fund. One is a GP commit. And I think there's been some awareness on Twitter about this more recently. I remember Jewel Burks tweeting out a little bit ago, and it might have been some others, but specifically, as a GP, you have to commit a certain percentage to the fund, basically to show skin in the game. You're starting something, you're saying you want other people to bet on you. Well, you have to first bet on yourself. And that's generally going to be at least 1% of the fund. So it's just something to be cognizant about in the back of your head. You know, do you have that capital? There's a whole bunch of nuance that relates to capital calls and like how it actually works. So you might not need to have it all like that day. Might not start the fund and you need to have your 1%, but you need to be able to give it. So one thing to consider. The other that I'll consider that people look for or say that people look for in emerging managers is deal attribution. So they're looking to understand what type of successes that you have that demonstrate that you'll be successful at doing this. I think there is some growth here in the way that people think about it, but it still can be pretty backwards in some senses. So I would start to think about, have you done an angel investment that was successful? Are there things that you can point to? Maybe you built your own company and you took that company from zero to whatever. That's also essentially like, it's not a deal, but it's something where you grew a company. So you should be able to help other people grow their companies if you demonstrated success. So basically, these are just two lenses that I'd consider upon starting a fund that LPs will start to really sharpen their questions around and are really important. The GP commit is just a yes or no. The deal attribution is more of a conversation.
So I'm just going to ask a follow-up question right here before Matt goes. Two quick follow-up questions. that I'm sure are on people's mind who understand this. One is on the GP commit. Are there like debt vehicles that you can access? And then the second is on the attribution side, like, you know, success has many fathers, failure's an orphan, right? Like, so sometimes deal attribution can be tricky. Like, so if there's any more you can share about deals where, you know, maybe you feel like you have attribution, but your firm doesn't or whatnot. Any thoughts on that?
I'll quickly comment because I brought it up, and I'll let Mac and Vincent weigh in. But the short answer GP commit is yes, but it can sometimes be hard to find. So that's just a nuanced thing there. To your point on the loan, or being able to get some leverage against that. And then to your second question around deal attribution, yes, I think that, again, investors are starting to see, or LPs are starting to see, that this is a hairy thing, that you can't just sometimes bring your deal from your firm. There's no like kind of formal thing that you can generally do, but as much information as they can understand about, you were part of this investment, or you were in you were the analyst, or you were not analyst, but you were the principal that helped to make this investment decision. You took it to investment committee, you did X, Y, and Z, and this is where it is. It now has raised 2 other rounds of funding. That helps to demonstrate. So they can like just have a conversation with you. It doesn't need to be a super formal thing, but you need to be able to show how you were integrated, involved, and how you thought about the deal, and, you know, what has happened as a result of that.
Thank you for that, Mac. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I'm going to answer the question, and I'm going to come back to the follow-ups. I'm going to try to answer it all if I can remember it all. So the things I learned going out to raise, are in the process of raising as I'm doing right now. It's just like being a founder. The network is super important. Like, you want to have a network of LPs to go to when you get started, to start building momentum. So you want to start building that before you go to raise. Like, if you just say, hey, I'm raising my fund today, and you start, you're like, I don't have any LPs, let me start meeting LPs. Like, start that way before you get there, right? Also, a lot of GPs are LPs and funds, right? That's as quiet as it's kept. There are a lot of GPs that are LPs and funds. Some of my first LPs, the first people to say yes to me, were GPs and funds. So, you know, that's the thing. Another thing I learned was, and like, I knew fundraising was going to be hard. And that's one of the reasons, like, I'm like kicking and screaming, didn't want to go raise the fund. But damn it, is fundraising hard. Like, I knew it was hard, and I still didn't understand how hard it was, right? So like, I wish I understood that. And the last thing I learned, and this is going to tie to the follow-up, is my entire career, I was told that venture and fundraising was done one way. And then I started fundraising and realized there is no such thing as one way. Everybody perpetuates one way, but there's a lot of different ways you could do it, right? You know, I was always told you couldn't publicly solicit. Well, thanks to the Job Act, you can. There's some rules around it, but, you know, 506C and 506B, you have options. You know, I was always told that capital calls are done one way. That's not true. There's been a lot of different ways you can schedule capital calls. We structured ours very differently, right? There's a lot of things you can do differently than what we've always been told. And so that was really instructive for me to learn. And to that point, we talked about GP commit. I don't have a GP commit. I don't have the money. And I've told all my LPs up front, I don't have a GP commit. And I've already been able to close on the first 2.4 million in my fund, right? Not having a GP commit. And me telling you and letting everybody know, like, look, I don't have a GP commit, but if you want to know how committed I am to this is my career. Like, I am stepping out to do this. And if this doesn't work, I'm probably out of venture. So I'm putting my career on the line. So understand, I am in this game to make you as much money as humanly possible, Mr. and Mrs. LP. Like, that is my GP commit. Now, to how you could go about handling GP commit, like, you can be bold and cocky as me and say you don't have one. I don't know if I suggest that for everybody. There are debt instruments. A lot of these, you know, banks will give you a loan for your GP commit. Grasshopper Bank's one of them. I'll name them. There are some, as quiet as it's kept, we always talk about this idea of taking in money for your management company or selling off a portion of your management company. right, for operational capital, there's a lot more firms that have done that people talk about. Just because it's not publicly talked about and it's frowned upon, there's a lot of firms that have started that way. And you can use that money for your GP commit. I also know somebody who, for their GP commit, actually deferred their GP commit and basically said, I'm going to take a portion of my fees every time my fees come out, and I'm gonna put that back into the fund as my GP commit. Like there are ways to structure this. There's a lot of things, a lot of different ways people have gone about doing it that we don't talk about, which is also one thing for everybody here who's listening, who wants to raise a fund or who has raised a fund. It is incumbent on you to have these conversations in public and with your peers and with other people. So we don't all just say, oh yeah, you do it this one way. Like, no, there's so many different ways to go about this. And that's probably been the biggest learning I've had in this process.
Mac, when are you gonna write a book?
One day, I got to raise first. I got fundraise first, like I told you. Like let me close the fund, take like a month of vacation, and then come back and like start on the book.
Wow, this is such an important conversation, and it's so rare to hear any of these topics discussed. So I'm thrilled. By the way, to the audience, I love that you're getting into it on the chat. Also, throw some questions in there to the Q&A. I guess my question is on the LP side, when you're pitching yourself, right? We're talking about emerging managers, right? We're talking about people who are, still relatively like young in their career. How do you pitch yourselves to LPs in terms of like, what are they looking at in terms of track record, in terms of like your unique strategy? Like, what are the factors that are more or less important to them? And maybe how was that different than your initial expectations?
I can take this one. I think what is really important indeed is a certain consistency between the project of your fund and your career before. And from this perspective, I believe it's really important to insist on the fact that I'm not sure, and that's something that we identify when we started to launch the fund. I'm not sure there's a need of a new VC fund or a new micro VC fund. I'm actually sure there's no much such a need. So if you bring, there are so many micro VC, that's what I'm saying. There's about 800, 1,000 of them raising at the moment. So I do believe that there's a strong call, a necessary call for differentiation, and this you can find it by tapping into your emotion and your authenticity, because at the end of the day, the first people who are going to invest in you, they're going to do it for who you are. I mean, and that's my own story. I didn't have any track record. I didn't work in a firm before. I had one happy end in China, okay, significant value creation, but still I didn't know much about VC. So the people that we managed to convince, they really did it for one, I think the entrepreneur journey that they were somehow believing in and respecting in terms of risks taken and energy that is given in such a product, the grit that we demonstrated, and maybe a little bit the craziness at stake. But also they were sounding ourselves to measure the level of trust they could place in us, and all this came through. Became real or confirmed thanks to the different experience of us they had. So it's a little bit like taking a bet on a pre-seed deal where you just have a deck, nothing has been really built. The guy is a first-time founder. What makes you take the decision? I really often take this analogy because it's exactly the same. what makes you convinced as a pre-seed investor that this guy has the capacity to deliver what he says? It's purely intuition based. So the question is, what trigger this intuition, what resonate with the person? And I think it's all about a certain alignment between what you say and who you truly are, and that does not trigger the bullshit matter of the person you have in front of. So I think it's all about deep question, and that you have to truly address, and this deep question will enable you to also extract your originality and therefore your differentiation. For us, I'm totally unable to invest in biotech or in I don't know, take any hardware, or I invest in the only industry that I know, because I've been working in this industry for 15 years almost. So I can't regret that. I can't lie on that, and I think they can connect with all the people that I've been interacting with. As a matter of fact, nobody for real checked our data room. So even institutional. So wow. Yeah. Sounds crazy.
The authenticity was so powerful. So Jessica or Mac, yeah.
I was gonna see if Jessica wanted to go, but happy to. So for me, it's to Vincent's point, first time Black fund manager, you're essentially like a first time entrepreneur with, for me, limited track record, but still not much I could point to. And so I knew very acutely, or I learned very quickly, that every LP I met was going to invest for a different reason, and not a single one of them was going to invest because of their process. Like if you're an LP with like a strict structured process of like, you got to hit this and all these check marks, you're never going to invest in me, right? I already know that a lot of the institutions I'm talking to, I'm going to due diligence, I already know they'll never invest in me. Like I'm not going to be able to hit those check marks. It's just not, right? Like I know that. And that's so I know that for the majority of my LPs, they're investing because they believe in me. They believe in they believe I can get differentiated deal flow, or just to keep it 100, they want to be able to say they invest in the Black GP, so the next dinner party they can mention it as a fun fact. Like just real talk. Like I literally have an LP who invested in me because he saw me argue with Jason Calacanis on Twitter. And then we had a 30-minute meeting after the fact. He's like, yeah, you're getting deal flow, meet people I'll never get to see. I'm in, here's 100K. I'm like, cool, right? Like, does he really think I'm going to return capital to him? I don't know if he does, right? But does he feel good giving me the check? He probably does. Like the 100K doesn't make a difference for him, right? Like I just know. Like and to that point, I've never pitched with my deck. My deck is literally just to send to people if they ask for it. I've never used it in a pitch, right? And the other thing that's worked really well for me that that I found out later, a lot of GPs don't do. Most GPs pitch, they use the deck and they go through their numbers and like, this is my track record, this is my number, my TVPI, my DPI. Granted, DPI is the most important thing in the world. TVPI is cool, but DPI is what matters. That's how much money you actually return, not theoretical. Right? At the end of the day, we're going for DPI. I can't eat with TVPI. It doesn't work that way. But for me, I tell stories. One, because storytelling is what I do. That's just who I am. So I use my skill sets to my advantage. And so I storytell. And what I found was most GPs don't do that. And when you do that, it makes the work that you do with founders and the way you evaluate companies and how you pick companies, it makes it real. You go from just showing a bunch of logos on the slide to talking about how you won those deals, how you helped that founder, how you helped them raise more money. And then for those folks who worry about attribution, a way you can get around attribution is use those founders as references, right? Because yeah, you may not have attribution, but if that founder's like, yeah, I met Mac and he's the one who convinced me to raise this capital, he really supported me. And when I raised my next round of funding, he made like 50 introductions for that stuff matters. And so having those founders vouch for you and then other VCs vouch for you will actually matter more in the long run than that deal attribution stuff.
Lastly, don't spend time with people who are not interested. Don't try to sell them something that they don't want. It's like the principles, I like the kid principle, but it's like the principle of dating. If someone is just not talking to you, they have not responded, you've sent them a follow-up, just take it as a signal and use your time towards places where you can find value. I think Mac really covered this, but basically think of everyone as a potential LP, and think of the addressable universe as huge. So no use getting caught up on someone that doesn't really resonate with what you're building. There also might not be a value at LP too. So it might not even be worth, if you get them to invest, they could just be the most annoying person on your cap table. So yeah.
Yeah, and to resonate with this, Jessica, I would even go like and keep on the analogy of the pre-seed deal. Look for smart money. Look for people they're gonna bring much more than just their dollars. They're gonna give advice. They're gonna maybe help your portfolio to grow, bring a certain strategic alignment. And I'm taking this example because that's the choice we made at Interlace, to have kind of a verticalized fund in a way that our LPs are somehow completely connected to our portfolio from the industry focus. But there's many ways to get smart money. It can be, of course, around, again, the venture industry in itself, the focus you have. It can be around the technology you want to tackle, or simply the resonance they have with you. It can be a coaching element, because it's a lonely journey to be a VC. It's good to have a coach, or the equivalent of a coach. So yeah, try to get even smart. I mean, money that is even smarter than just a blank check.
My only pushback on that is, don't give yourself a no. Make somebody tell you no. Like if you sent them 6 or 7 emails and they haven't responded, they still haven't said no yet. So keep going. So I'll tell you this. Eric from Hustle Fund likes to tell the story of one of their LPs. He emailed 17 times before they cut a check. Like they just didn't respond to the first 16. And after email 17, they didn't respond to that email. They just sent the money, right? And so I actually have an LP like that, who's one of my larger LPs, who told me he was going to commit to my fund. And for 5 months, I'm sending this man emails about, hey, you still doing this? You're still doing this? And then I woke up one day and he signed the paperwork and sent it to me. He never said anything, right? So like, don't give yourself a no. Like make them say no. Like if they haven't responded to emails, keep sending them, right? Keep giving them updates, keep letting them know, because you just never know.
Or find another way to them. Try to talk to someone that might know them, because maybe you're going to spam. Honestly, to be honest, there's a chance.
You know, we just talked a bit about LPs, and you know, a lot of people would say like, well, I don't know enough LPs really to start a process, and like I can't imagine that. Is it that you know, along the way you got to know a lot of LPs and you got to a critical mass where you said, like, kind of like a founder, right? You'd say like, okay, I want to know enough VCs and know who I'm going to go talk to, or is it more like once you made the decision, I'm going to go out there and do this, that like LPs started appearing, you know, because LPs can be sort of mysterious and elusive and they're not on social media and whatnot. So like, help us understand that dynamic.
So I'm happy to jump this one off because my story on LPs is completely different and like out of the normal, right? So for me, I was told to go raise this fund, right? I told you I got pushed kicking and screaming. And then my personal network of folks who could potentially, who I thought could be LPs, got me to 400K, which is a far cry from 10 million. And I didn't know how or where to go to find LPs. Like I had no clue. And what happened was, at the time when I decided to start raising my fund was around the time I started tweeting more. And as I was getting more active on Twitter, I just noticed more VCs were following me. And so I just made a point. If you were a VC and you followed me, I sent you a DM with a little message about who I was and a link to my calendar. And about 80% of them put time on my calendar. And like, I took a ton of meetings. So from middle of June to the middle of September, I had over 1,100 meetings. And I would say about 70, 75% were other VCs. But along the way, a lot of those other VCs started committing to putting dollars into my fund. It started introducing me to folks who would put money into my fund. And so from that June and September timeline, I was able to soft circle the first 2 million of verbal commits, which gave me the confidence of like, okay, this is not the smartest strategy to do this. This is taking up a lot of time and this really sucks, but this gets me to my goal. So let's do that. I have now reached the point where I'm slowing down on that strategy and like being more strategic about finding LPs. So a friend of mine, Yohei from Untapped Capital, what he did was he went on LinkedIn and found everybody who had fund to funds, LP, family office, anything like that in their bio and searched for them. And then he took all the people who were second connections and went through all his first connections and asked for introductions and like systematically just worked through that list of like 300 or 400 people, right? And that's how he kickstarted, right? So like there's a lot of different ways to do it. You just got to figure out your best way for you to start building out that network. Because at the end of the day, network is key. And like now, thanks to my Twitter presence, like I can get to with people. But like when I started, I was really at a loss.
What is sure is that there's definitely a certain systematism to be put into place and to hustle for a while. I look at what we did and I don't recommend at all because we waste so much time. We were convinced that we were in position. We had so many contacts in corporates coming from the corporate world and contact with brands and retailers. And we were thinking that was such a no-brainer for them to invest in a small fund who was agile, who could bring the granularity of the innovation of US on their alley. And the reality is that they take so much time to make a decision and they are kind of risk averse. So why would a big brand or a big retailer invest in a non-brand? That's just not happening. But it took us so much time to understand that. We probably lost about 8 months in our fundraising process, but we were super active. So again, in understanding the category of the potential category of LPs, and for this, I also resonate with the good advice of Hustle Fund. Take any check you can and start maybe with the low-hanging fruit, meaning individuals who trust you, and then from that it brings the level of confidence you were talking about, Mac. On our end, we got super lucky to get anchored by a big family at some point. But it took us 2 years to convince them, and it started with a big no, total unexpected no, and after 2 years, finally, this guy decided to back us. Long effort.
The quick thing I'll add to Vincent's point when he's saying different types of LPs, basically there's a break between institutional LPs and kind of other, for lack of a better word. And the other group is like family offices and high net worth individuals or individuals in general. And then the institutions that take a longer time or are corporates, foundations, endowments, those require just a real diligence process and traditionally can take some time to want to get to know you. They're also looking at a number of other funds and different asset classes. So it's really of a more of a relationship building thing. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not insurmountable, basically, those relationships, but it is difficult or more difficult as an emerging manager to come into a lot of those institutional. So you have to start to lay the groundwork and have conversations for 6, 9, 12 months to bring them in.
Thank you guys for that. Okay, I'm just looking through the some of the Q&A here, and there's sort of a common theme here is how different is the approach when pitching to LPs about investing in underrepresented founders, assuming or investors, And what's been the response? What's the most convincing argument or approach you've used?
Well, I think you have some LPs that got a mandate around that that is clearly identified, but this is quite new. So of course, when you have the opportunity to talk to this person, do not be shy on showing what the process you follow and how you actually address the DEI question within your firm. And for us, interestingly enough, that was not really a topic before it became the topic, but naturally we over-index underrepresentation. The reason is the grit of the founder is probably one of the key characteristics, coming back to this pre-seed founder that has no any track record and maybe just a deck. Measuring his capacity to deliver his vision, his capacity to execute, goes through measuring the commitment, the passion, the grit that is able to demonstrate. And so we turn to believe that a person coming from an underrepresented community in venture has potentially more grit because it came from further and had to cross many barriers and challenges to just be in front of a VC and pitching. So we turn to over-index that, but naturally, and as a matter of fact, without actually measuring or giving us quota objective, we turn to have more than 70% of our portfolio company that check the box of underrepresentation without representing a certain community or the Afro-American community, if we within the context of Black VC. But yeah, 70% of those. But yeah, it's a good chance. It's great that it's coming on the debate. But I think, and I'm going to quote one of my peers, that investing in underrepresented founders is just good business. It's rare to find all the stats around that, but at the end of the day, I'm deeply convinced about that, because it takes so much energy and so much time to deliver and to create value, and you hit so many walls. So grit is so fundamental.
So we here for the Black VC talk, right? So forgive me if I'm about to keep it too real with everybody, but let's really talk about this, right? First and foremost, we mentioned institutional LPs, right? Now, everybody remembers when George Floyd happened and all the VCs were coming about saying they wanted to invest in Black people. You know who didn't? You know who you didn't hear a word from? Institutional LPs, because you don't know who they are. Like, none of these endowments, none of these pension funds, none of them said anything, because you don't know them, because they don't care. Number one. Number two, go find me historical data that shows that investing in underrepresented founders leads to unicorns. You're not going to be able to find the numbers because there haven't been many unicorns founded by Black and brown people. There are more unicorns that have had hired CEOs who were Black and brown people than there are that were founded by Black and brown people. So if you're doing seed and early investments where you're investing in folks at the early stages, those numbers don't add up. So again, institutional LPs aren't as interested in that. It's number two. The third point is, remember Vincent mentioned when you pitch to LPs, they want to hear differentiation. It's just like when startups pitch to us, we want to hear differentiation. I can't tell you how many funds I know being raised right now whose differentiation is investing in underrepresented founders. So if you're an LP and you want to invest in diverse GPs, and you just saw 50 diverse GPs, and 45 of them said their differentiation was that they invest in underrepresented founders, what does that leave you with? Like, let's be clear about it, right? And now, is that right? Of course it's not. It's a chicken and egg thing. The reason why there haven't been as many unicorns because we weren't investing in those companies before. But that's not necessarily the LP's job to solve. Just like when an entrepreneur pitches you and says that they don't have traction, they're like, I need money to get traction. Well, you're like, that's not my job to solve as the VC. You got to come with the traction. You got to figure that out. It's the parallels are crazy here. It's the same thing. So keep in mind, as you go out to raise a fund, if that's what you're going to raise, the platform you're going to raise on, is that differentiated enough? And it could be, but also understand only so many of these LPs care about that, are going to do that. And like right now, it's the hot thing. But in 3-4 years from now, it may not be. And if it's not, then who your LP base is. Because like, here's the thing, all the institutions who have invested in our fund so far have invested out of a diversity initiative. They didn't invest out of their fund. They invest out of an initiative. And initiatives aren't long lasting. Those are for a period of time. So when those initiatives go away, if I was to go raise my fund again, those initiatives don't exist. Do those funds invest in me still? I don't know. And I don't have a diversity initiative for that reason, just because it's just an extra barrier when going to raise. And like for other people, they don't see it as a barrier, they see it as a plus, and that's fine. For me, as I look to grow my fund over time, I want to grow my AUM. So fund one, $10 million, $20 million fund, you can fund that from family offices, individuals. You can have all kinds of different mandates because individuals want to ride with you. When you go to 50 million plus, you got to go to those institutions. You're going to go to those pension funds. They don't care about that. Like, let's be totally honest. The Railroad Pension Fund of Iowa does not give a damn about diversity. They care about returns, right? And so having that additional conversation when I go to pitch, I don't want that because they're going to have the conversation with me anyway because I'm Black. Like they're automatically going to assume I do that anyway because I'm Black. And I just have to let them know, like, no, I don't do that. And they're like, oh, really? Right? Like just so we're all clear on this. And this isn't for me to say that like it's a bad thing, right? I want to be honest with everybody as you go to raise capital. Like these are the forces in the market. Don't at me.
Too real. I love it. I love it. Jessica?
I don't have much to say aside from that. I think you have to think about the longevity. So just to reemphasize, I think what Mac is saying is thinking about the longevity of your fund and who's in and how you're going to take this, because success is not having one $10 million fund. Success is having fund 4 or 5, being Andreessen. Success is having a multi-million-dollar assets under management. And of course, it's not being any firm. I'm just saying, I don't, attribute success to any one individual firm, but it's growing your AUM after each fund and having successful exits. So how you get to that and how you differentiate is all very specific. I will say, because I'm in the PE lane, there's a kind of slightly different game that I'm playing. And when I think about a demographic focus in private equity, specifically investing in small businesses, that doesn't exist. And that's what we're going after with my firm. So just think about where, taking a step back, just like college, like white space, consulting, whatever, you're looking at the white space and the blue ocean strategy. Where are you playing and how is that differentiated from others? And if actually what LPs ask a lot is, so how is this different? Like, what are the other funds that are doing something similar to what you're doing? You want to be able to say very candidly that there are a few, or, I'm differentiated because X, Y, and Z, and here's why. So just a little, some extra gems, but I think Matt covered it very well.
Awesome. Well, we're just at time here. This has been one of the best conversations I've ever had. I feel grateful that you all could join me here to have this conversation. I'm glad it's being recorded so other people can benefit, so I can listen to this, rewatch this myself. And I think the folks who are in the audience are chattering and really appreciating it as well. Wow, so many things to think about and take away. So I want to thank you all for being on this call. Jessica, Mac, Vincent. Truly grateful. And on the behalf of Black VC, to the audience members, thank you all for attending. Definitely fill out the survey. Give us feedback, help us understand, what was interesting, what you would have liked to hear more of, so that we can make the next one just as good or even better. So thank you, everybody. And I don't know if anybody, any of the panelists want to have any parting words, you're welcome to, but that's it for me.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
It was great.
Take care, everybody. Thank you
Next
again.
time, family.